Hello dear students, welcome to the digital class. Today we will learn the key concepts in biology of 8th and 9th classes to understand the concepts better in 10th class. Today we will learn about reproduction in plants, reproduction in animals, about the adolescence, which part of the plant produces seeds, which type of reproduction takes place in plants, what is the role of flowers in plants, an organism producing an offspring that is biologically similar to it is called reproduction. Observe this picture on the screen. This is datura flower. Here you can see different parts of the flower. They are calyx, also called as sepals, and these are corolla, also called as petals, and these are stamens, also called as androecium, and this is pistil, and this is called as gynoecium. Now look at this picture carefully. This is the first whorl of the flower, that is calyx, and this is also called as sepals. This part protects the flower when it is in the bud form, and this is the second whorl of the flower. This is also called as petals, and these are mostly colorful and emits fragrance to attract insects for pollination, and these are stamens, and this is the third whorl of the flower. In the stamen there are two parts. This is the filament and this is the pollen sac. This pollen sac produces pollen grains. Pollen grains are the male gametes. Hence, this third whorl stamens are called as androecium, and this is the fourth whorl, innermost whorl of the flower, and this is called as pistil. Look at this picture carefully. This is the pistil. It has three parts. This is the ovary, and this is the style, and these are the stigma of the pistil. Ovary produces ovules. Ovules are the female gametes, and hence it is called as gynoecium. So, pistil is also called as gynoecium. Do all the flowers have four main parts? Flowers may be classified on the basis of parts present in them. Let us study about the different types of flowers. Observe this flower carefully. Look at this video, students. This is the calyx, this is the corolla, these are the stamens, and this part is called as pistil. This is the stigma of the pistil. So, this flower has all the four parts, hence it is called as complete flower. So, if the flower has four parts, then it is called as a complete flower. Examples: datura, hibiscus, and rose flower. Now, look at this video carefully. Here, this is the plant of castor plant. If you see the flower, it has calyx, stamens, and pistil. It does not have corolla. That means, corolla is missing in this flower. If you see this flower, it has stamens and no pistil. Look at this picture. So, these are all the examples of incomplete flowers. That means, out of four whorls of the flower, some parts missing. If any one of the part missing, then it is called as incomplete flower. Now, observe this flower carefully. It has only pistil. There are no stamens in this flower. Here you can see stamens in the flower, but no pistil. Look at the flower carefully. Here you can see the stamens, and pistil is absent. Here you can see the pistil and no stamens. Such type of flowers are called as unisexual flowers. If a unisexual flower that has only stamen and not pistil that flower has called as male flower. If a unisexual flower, it has pistil and no stamen, is called as female flower. Now, observe this flower. It has all the 4 parts, that is calyx, corolla, androecium and gynoecium. So, this type of flowers are called as bisexual flowers. If a flower has androecium and gynoecium, that is stamens and pistil in it, it is called as bisexual flower. Example, hibiscus and datura. Now, we will see how does a carpel develop into fruit. Transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma is called as pollination. Transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma is known as pollination. If transfer of pollen grains takes place within the same flower or transfer of pollen grains to the another flower of the same plant is known as self pollination. Here you can see the pollen from this stamen is falling on the stigma of the same flower. Here you can see the pollen falling on the stigma of another flower of the same plant. This type of pollination is called as self pollination. Here you can see pollen from one flower is falling on the other flower of the same species. Hence, it is called as cross pollination. Here you can see transfer of pollen grains from one flower to stigma of another flower of the same species is called as cross pollination. So, how does pollination takes place in nature? Pollination takes place by air, water and insects, etc. Insects like honeybees suck nectar from flowers. At the time, pollen grains of that flower stick to the legs of the insects. When the insects goes to another flower for nectar, the pollen grain that have stuck to its legs fall on the flower. What happens to the pollen grain after pollination? Here you can see, as you know, pistil has 3 parts, that is ovary, style and stigma. Ovary produces ovules, that is female gametes. Stigma has some substances which promote the germination of pollen grains. So, this pollen tube passes through the style of the pistil and reaches the ovary, and this tube has male gametes. These male gametes travel all the way from the stigma through the style to the ovary and reaches the female gamete. So, here the male and female gametes fuse together to form a structure called a zygote. This process is called as fertilization. After fertilization, usually ovaries develop into fruit. The entire process of pollination and formation of zygote is called sexual reproduction. Irrespective of floral parts, the production of new plants from the vegetative parts of a plant, that is root, stem and leaves, is known as vegetative reproduction. How does reproduction in animals takes place? Which animals give birth to young ones? Which animals lay eggs? Let us see. The animals having epidermal hair on their skin and external ears are called as viviparous animals. These animals have epidermal hair on their skin and they have external ears also. So, such type of animals are called as viviparous animals. These animals, they give birth to their young ones. Examples: cat, dog, tiger, elephant and goat. All these animals have epidermal hair on their skin and they have external ears. You can see the big ears in elephant. Here in these animals like hen, they do not have epidermal hair on their skin and they do not have external ears. Such type of animals are called oviparous animals. Ovi means egg. egg laying animals are called as oviparous animals. Example: hen, duck, peacock, snake, frog and lizard. If you look at these pictures, here you cannot see any hair on their skin. Do you find any hair on their skin? No. So, these animals, they do not have external ears also. So, such type of animals are called as oviparous animals. Reproduction in animals is of two types: sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. Reproduction resulting in zygote formation from the fusion of male and female gametes is called as sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction you can see in the human beings, dogs, goats, tigers, etc. The type of reproduction where the fusion of gametes does not take place is called as asexual type of reproduction. Example: amoeba, paramecium, hydra, etc. Students, observe this video. Here you can see the budding in hydra. In hydra, first a small outgrowth called bud. Here you can see buds on the hydra. These buds are formed on the side of its body by the repeated divisions of its cells. This bud then grows gradually to form a small hydra by developing a mouth and tentacles. And finally, the tiny new hydra detaches from the body of the parent hydra and lives as independent organism. See this video, students.
Yes.
The baby hydra is getting detached from the parent hydra and lives independently. Now children, see this video, binary fission in amoeba. Amoeba is a unicellular organism, and just like bacteria, it reproduces through binary fission. After replicating its genetic material through mitotic division, the cell divides into two similar daughter cells, two similar sized daughter cells. In this method, two similar individual organisms are produced from a single parent cell. Here you can see the division of nucleus, then you can see cell divides into two halves. This is called as binary fission in amoeba. Does a small frog come out when the frog's egg hatches? What is metamorphosis? The young ones of some animals, they resemble their parents. Look at this picture carefully, students, and they look alike. They resemble their parents, but in some animals they do not. The young ones of some animals resemble their parents and some do not when they emerge from their eggs. Over a period of time, the transformation of the shape of the body occurs during development, and only then they begin to resemble their parents. This process is called metamorphosis. Here you can see the metamorphosis in butterfly. The adult female butterfly lays eggs. Eventually, they hatch into larvae known as caterpillars. Look at this. These eggs, they hatch into caterpillars. The larva is called as caterpillar. See the caterpillar coming out from the egg. These caterpillars feed on the leaves of various plants. After feeding the caterpillar, it turns into pupa. This is the second stage of metamorphosis. Finally, inside the pupa, various changes occur, and eventually metamorphosis turns the pupa into an adult butterfly. In frogs, fusion takes place outside the female body, that is in the water. Hence, it is called external fertilization. If the fertilization takes place outside the female body, it is called as external fertilization. At the time of mating, the male frog releases sperm cells and the female frog lays eggs into the water. Fusion takes place in the water, that is outside the female's body. Hence, it is called as external fertilization. After a few days, a baby frog known as tadpole hatches out of the egg that looks more like a fish than a frog. You can see after repeated divisions in the zygote, it develops into a larva called tadpole. Tadpole looks more like a fish than frog. Look at this video carefully, children. The larva feeds on the yolk of the egg from which it came out. As time passes by, tadpoles develop external gills that help them breathe under the water. Their tail begins to elongate and fins also develop and spend their time eating plants and algae, and it lives like a herbivore. As they continue to grow for several weeks, external gills begin to disappear and hind limbs start appearing. Then after a few more weeks, the tadpole begins to look somewhat like a frog as it turns into froglet, and during this stage they develop forelimbs and lungs for breathing outside water, and on the final stage their tail becomes smaller and smaller and eventually disappears. Then it hops right out of the water onto the dry land for the first time, where it enters the adult stage in the next couple of years. This is the adult frog. Here you can see egg, tadpole, froglet and adult frog. This is the life cycle of frog. What are the different stages in human life? There are different stages in human life from birth to death. They are infancy, childhood, adolescence, young age, adulthood, middle age and old age. Among all the stages of life, adolescence is the most important stage. There are different stages. The time period when the body undergoes changes to reach reproductive maturity is known as adolescence. It begins around the age of 10 and lasts till about 18 or 19 years of age. The period between 10 to 19 years of age is called adolescent period. What kind of physical changes do we see in adolescence? We can see many changes during adolescence. One of it is change in the height. It is caused by the growth in long bones of the arms and legs. Plants grow continuously throughout their life, but we do not grow uniformly like plants. We grow to a certain height for a certain period only. Our growth rate is very high in specific periods and slow in specific periods. Height increases in maximum pace during this adolescence period. Girls grow faster than boys initially, but both reach their maximum height by the age of 18 years. The rate of growth patterns are different. Next, we will see voice changes in the adolescence. Change in voice. There is not much change in the voice of girls when compared to boys. The voice of the boys become hoarse at this stage. Voice box or larynx starts growing during puberty. It protrudes in males in the neck region and is called Adam's apple. This is called Adam's apple, and Adam's apple is actually a partial growth of the voice box or larynx. The larynx is made up of 9 cartilages. one of which is the largest called thyroid cartilage. The Adam's apple is formed due to elongation of the thyroid cartilage, which protrudes out in front of the neck. Muscles attached to the cartilage get loosened and thickened. When air passes through these loosened and thickened cords, a hoarse sound is produced. Males have a low pitch bass voice. The activity of sweat glands increase during puberty, resulting in production of more sweat. The oily secretions from sebaceous glands increase. The accumulation of oil and bacterial action leads to the formation of pimples in teenagers. Care should be taken for these. Do not squeeze the pimples. Wash the face thoroughly with mild soaps and warm water. Never get worried about pimples because stress and strain may increase them. What changes do you observe in the body of boys and girls? Boys develop broad shoulders, wider chests and prominent muscles. In boys, facial hair, moustaches and beards begin to grow. The voice becomes hoarse. Boys grow tall. In girls, voice becomes high pitched. Breasts begin to develop and the menstrual cycle starts. In girls, the region below the waist becomes wider. These are called secondary sexual characters. The sex organs by which children are identified as boys and girls at birth represent primary sexual characters. Why should we protest child marriages? Generally, parents try to get their daughters married as soon as they reach puberty. But the legal age to get married is 21 years for men and 18 years for women. One should not get married below this age. Adolescent girls may not be fit physically and mentally for marriage. What type of behavioral changes takes place in adolescent boys and girls? The adolescent stage is fast growing age. Adolescent is the stage of transition and confusion. The adolescent stage is fast growing age where many physical changes take place. Apart from this, many behavioral changes also take place, like they show interest towards their body and self, give importance to friends and peer groups rather than their parents. Adolescents are very fast in taking decisions and like taking risks. They are sensitive and emotional, search for their identity among friends and peers. They are also mentally stressed. The secretions of endocrine glands, which are known as hormones, perform several functions in the body. The onset of puberty or development of secondary sexual characters and maturity of reproductive parts are controlled by hormones that become functional at the onset of adolescence. These hormones play an important role in the growth, development of gametes, secondary sexual characters and emotions of adolescents. Which factors affect the health of adolescents? The health of an adolescent is affected by a balanced diet, hygiene and physical exercise. Balanced diet is very important because their body parts, muscles, bones are growing. So, they need more amount of carbohydrates, proteins and nutrient rich food. If they tend to eat only junk food, may lead to ulcers, obesity, hypertension and diabetes. Excess production of oil in the body may lead to skin problems also. Next, cleanliness. In adolescents, we find excess sweat, excess oily secretions from sebaceous glands. This leads to bad odor from the body. So, they need to keep their bodies clean by taking bath regularly. Fast and frigid. We see many changes in adolescents like physical, mental, emotional changes. Many of the adolescents, they are fast in taking decisions without intimating their parents. Sometimes they may look frigid. Summary: a flower has 4 main parts. They are calyx, corolla, stamens and pistil. A flower that has either stamens or pistil is called a unisexual flower. A flower with only stamens is a male flower. A flower with only a pistil is a female flower. A flower having both stamens and pistil is a bisexual flower. Anther in the stamens produce pollen grains, also called male gametes, reaches the stigma of pistil. This is called pollination. Pollination is of two types. Pollen from one flower reaches the stigma of the same flower is called self-pollination. Pollen from one flower reaches the stigma of another flower is called cross-pollination. Reproduction in animals is of two types, sexual reproduction, asexual reproduction. Reproduction resulting in zygote formation from the fusion of male and female gametes is called sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction occurs in human beings, dogs, goats, tigers, etc. The type of reproduction where fusion of gametes does not take place is called as asexual reproduction. It occurs in organisms like amoeba, paramecium, hydra. The young ones of some animals resemble their parents and some do not when they emerge from their eggs. Over a period of time, the transformation of the shape of the body occurs during development and only then they begin to resemble their parents. This process is called metamorphosis. It occurs in frogs, houseflies and silk moths. Budding in hydra, binary fission in amoeba are asexual modes of reproduction. The period between 10 to 19 years of age is called adolescent period. During adolescence, a child's body undergoes many changes physically, mentally and socially. The health of an adolescent is affected by a balanced diet, hygiene and physical exercise. Evaluation. Which part of the plant propagates vegetatively? What are the differences between sexual and asexual reproduction? Name the types of pollination. Compare the external characters of viviparous animals with oviparous animals. How does budding in hydra takes place? Explain the life cycle of a frog. Explain the binary fission in amoeba with the help of a diagram. What changes take place at the age of adolescence? What is the reason for hoarse voice in boys? Write the behavioral changes occurred in you at adolescent period. So children, so far we have learned the key concepts from 8th and 9th classes biology. So this will help you in learning the concepts in present class, that is now 10th class. So children, hope you understand better. We will meet in the next session with another topic. Till then, take care, stay safe.
జనరల్ నాలెడ్జ్ లో మన విజ్ఞానాన్ని మరింత పెంచేందుకు టీసాట్ ప్రత్యేక కార్యక్రమం చేపట్టింది. పలు అంశాలపై మనకున్న తెలివితేటల్ని పరీక్షించుకోవడం, తెలియని అంశాలపై అవగాహన పెంచుకునేందుకు ఈ కార్యక్రమం రూపకల్పన చేసింది. ఈ ప్రత్యేక క్విజ్ కార్యక్రమంలో మీరు పాల్గొనాలనుకుంటున్నారా? మీ విజ్ఞానాన్ని మా ద్వారా ప్రపంచానికి పంచాలనుకుంటున్నారా? అయితే మీ ప్రశ్నలు మరియు ఆప్షన్స్ మా టీసాట్ ఛానల్ పై నేరుగా సంధించండి లేదా ఈమెయిల్ కు పంపించగలరు. ఫస్ట్ క్వశ్చన్ ఈజ్ అబౌట్ యాక్టివిస్ట్. Stands for me, the tribal rights activist who passed away recently was booked under which act? Option A, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Option B, Prevention of Terrorism Act. Option C, Terrorist and Disruptive Activists Act. Option D, none of the above. The time starts now. The correct answer is option A, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Stands for me, the Jesuit priest and tribal rights activist spent 9 months in custody after being booked under the UAPA. Unlawful Activities Prevention Act is the primary counter-terror law in India. Though it was originally enacted in 1967, the law has undergone over 6 amendments, the last one in 2019. Stan Swamy was among the 16 activists and lawyers booked and arrested for their alleged